Hello, everyone. My name's Chris with Silva Realty. I am here with one of my good friends.
Hi, everyone. My name's O Hare. I'm an estate planning attorney, trust, wills, probate, and we are based here in Santa Clarita.
So the reason I have Ed with us today, and we're lucky enough to get him today because he's extremely swamped with the climate of what we have going on here, is Ed's going to tell us a little bit about living trust and why they're so important today more than ever in this climate. Ed, can you tell us what is a living trust?
Thanks, Chris. Hey, just a quick note, how we mentioned this to everyone. Just want to mention that our conversation today is just general legal advice. It's not specific to anyone, and it doesn't create an attorney-client relationship. And if you would like to do that, you're always welcome to call my office, O Hare Law Office, or your attorney. And so just need to mention that first. But with that said, the living trust. So a living trust it's a legal document, of course. In California, when someone has more than $150,000, so if you own a home, that's you. And the powers that be, the lawmakers in California, right up in Sacramento, they set that number, $150,000. When they determined that and wrote that into California probate law, they're not subtracting out for your mortgage. So they don't look at your mortgage. They look at the gross value of your home, like what a realtor would sell your home for, right? Average nowadays, Chris, I think in Santa Clarita are we around 500K? Is that
500, 550-ish.
Okay. So period, right there. If you own a house, you are over the $150,000 limit. When that happens, automatically triggers that you need the living trust. And the reason for that is because without the trust, if you have more than $150,000 in your estate and you die, the courts are going to require you to go through probate. That's a judge-supervised court process. Essentially, the courts are saying, hey, that estate value is large enough. It's got to come through us, through the courts, for us to oversee it, for us to look at it. Okay. If you're below that, and that's for folks who don't own a home, maybe, there could be anything. They're renting. I think of my wife's grandmother, for example. She gets a pension from LA Unified. She rents here in town. She doesn't have $150,000 in her estate. So if she passes away, it's not going to go through the courts. The lawmakers say, hey, you can wrap that up quietly without court involvement. But for those with more than $150,000, you need the living trust. So you're basically at a fork in the road. If you don't have the trust, you have more than $150K, you're going to court. If you do have the trust, you have that legal document. The courts say, hey, you can keep that out of court too, and you can just wrap that up on your own outside of court.
So let's talk about this, because what we'll see in real estate is we see probate listings, right?
Yes.
So that means basically, somebody's passed away. They didn't have a living trust. Now that home is stuck in probate, which typically can take up to 12 months. Is that correct?
We're seeing right now, our probates are averaging about 16 months. So almost a year and a half.
Okay. So just to come right back full circle. So 16 months to sell a home that's in probate. So I really want to put this scenario out there for a lot of people at home watching this. Okay. God forbid you have a parent, grandparent, a loved one that's, older, that can be affected by COVID. What's going on? Right now we think they're more susceptible. We don't know, but that's what people are talking about. So unfortunately, God forbid something happened to them and they pass and they didn't have a living trust. Okay. This is reality. This is what happens every single day. Now, instead of being able to grieve and deal with, taking care of your family, now you're having to go through court and through probate. So can you just briefly tell them what exactly is probate to people that are listening at home?
Yeah, good. That's a great question. And that's all true, Chris. So when people get, and that the way you just described it is how I view it also. It's like, wow, people are already dealing with so much, a loss, a tragedy, it could be devastating. And now you have to deal with court. And so it's almost like the one time people are guaranteed to come into contact with the court system, again, if they don't have a trust. So if people find themselves there, not going to pull punches. I think probate is quite the bureaucracy. That's what it is. It's a maze. It's a labyrinth. And people, to navigate that, they need to hire an attorney. That's for sure. And then you just start the process. The attorney generally is going to create all the documents, petition the court, get a court hearing for you, communicate with the bond company, communicate with the newspaper company, and I mean, you'll be paying the newspaper, but to put that little notice, those little squares in the back of the newspaper, you have everything from classified ads, fictitious business names. If you look at the newspapers, you'll see the little notices of probate back there. You have to notify everyone, hey, there's been a death, this person passed, here's the case number, here's the court date. If this person owed you money, show up at court. So you have to broadcast that to
Right.
everyone, and it's not private. That's not nice. And all those things, each of those steps costs a lot of money. So then the first step that we do, we go to court, and thankfully, typically the client doesn't have to go to court themselves most of the time. We do that. We'll go to court. We show up. We will get the client approved as administrator. And then once they're approved, it's kind of like getting that magic, that golden ticket there. Once you're approved as the administrator, now you have full legal authority to wrap up the deceased person's estate.
So let me ask you this: from the beginning of probate to the end of probate, you said that's about 16 months,
Yes.
average, right? Give or take.
Yeah.
Okay,
Correct.
so what about for the people out there? Because I hear this all the time when I tell people about how important it is to have a trust. And as you know, it's so important that I'm not 40 years old yet, and my wife and I are wrapping it up, right? We think it's important enough to have a plan set up for our kids, and we're healthy, right? So what about the people? Because I tell people about living trust, they go, oh no, I'm safe, I have a will. Or, my parent has a will. So does a will protect someone from probate?
It doesn't. And I love that question. So much of this field is, I think there's misconceptions, and people mean really well, but maybe slightly misunderstand something, and then their family can end up in probate court. Interestingly, so there's three categories of people in the sense of estate planning. The largest category, and we estimate this is something around the number of 70% of people in California don't have any estate planning done at all. So that group of people, when they die, again, if they have more than 150K, if they own a house, that kind of thing, their loved ones are going to probate. Then the second category of people, they just have a will. Well, interestingly, wills in California, they also go to probate. At least it's better than the folks who don't have anything, because when someone doesn't have anything, the judge, they're basically, for lack of a better way to describe it, they're following like a flow chart of who gets your things, of closeness of your family tree. There's like a pecking order. So the folks who have a will, that's still going to probate, but at least in your will, you get to designate where your things go. But again, the judge has to oversee that through probate. And then the last category of the three is the folks who have a trust, and that keeps everyone 100% out of court. It's wrapped up quietly, takes a 4-month window of time, not a year and a half. So a quick answer to your question is, when people only have a will, their loved ones will go to probate for sure.
Got it. Okay, so then wrapping everything up, bringing everything together.
Yes.
Let's say the average price of a home is $550, right? Or let's say $500 for number's sake. Okay, property goes into probate. What's the cost of a probate for a $500,000 property, let's just say, or $500,000 estate, as opposed to the cost of setting up a living trust?
That's an awesome question, and I'm going to give you specific numbers right now because recently I added to my website a probate calculator. So the probate fees, the fees for probate, so you're in real estate. A typical real estate commission is usually about like a percent, right? It's just a percent of
Right.
the value, so on and so forth. So with probate, it's also a percent, but it's a tiered calculation. So let me just pull this up. So I have it right here. It gets a little more complicated than just a straight, like a real estate commission. So I'm going to give you exact numbers here. So an estate worth $500,000, to probate that estate would cost $26,000. Those fees, Chris, those are called statutory fees. Those fees are set within the statute of the probate laws of the state of California. They're, as you know, very high, $26K. That's a lot of money. I joke to people, at least, I say, hey, so the politicians are the ones who set the fees in Sacramento. Most of them are lawyers, right? So these fees are high. But in truth, probate is a lot of work. It's a year and a half of work. So when the fee typically is going to two people, the attorney helping with the work and the executor or the administrator, who is typically a family member of the person who died. Usually if it's like an older person, it's one of their adult children is very normal. So they're getting half of that fee as well. The estates we see that I deal with a lot of in Santa Clarita, I think 800K is a pretty normal estate value size. You have the house, 650, maybe 700K. You have a couple cars, you have some cash, some personal property, some possessions. So you get up to 800 pretty easily. To probate an $800,000 estate's $38,000.
Got it.
That's a pretty normal.
Okay, so another question. What about if somebody has out-of-state assets? Because we fall into that category.
Yes.
And it's more than 150. How does that work with setting up a trust here?
So thank you for asking that. A probate just in California alone is a challenge. It's a process the person's not going to forget going through. When you throw in out-of-state property on top of it, well, unfortunately, you're going to have a California probate and an out-of-state probate in whatever state that is. People own it. Oftentimes we'll see in the scenario you're mentioning is rental property, say in Arizona, in Florida, in Texas, different places, Could be anywhere. So your loved ones are going to do a probate in California. They're also going to do one in Florida or wherever state it is. So again, that's a key part when we create the living trust. We have to ensure that any out-of-state real estate is transferred into this California's trust name. That will avoid any probate in any state entirely.
Got it. All right. So wrapping it all up, probate court, $550,000 house, roughly 35 to 40 grand in cost, maybe. And then living trust, how much does that cost? Roughly.
Ballpark. Yeah, sure. In Santa Clarita, ballpark for a comprehensive living trust, estate plan that covers all the bases, it's typically around $2,500 for a married couple for an attorney to do the work.
Got it. And I just want to paint this picture for everybody out there, okay? Again, I have so many friends that their parents are a little bit older and they have a home and they don't have a living trust, okay? So tell this to your parents, show them this video. They've worked their whole lives to earn these assets to pass on to their children. That's what most parents want. I know that's what we want as parents, myself and my wife, Corey. We want to pass on our assets to our kids. So for parents that have worked so long to pay down their house, it's so important for them to just take that last step of getting that living trust so that they can assure that all their assets are passed on to their children. Because if they don't, you're paying probate now. On top of that, if they're selling the home, you're paying another 6%, right? So on a $550,000 house, $60,000, $70,000 is probably gone right off the bat. And for a lot of people, they don't have their house paid off. So that could be almost everything. So now you're dealing with 16 months of headache when you should be grieving, and you don't get anything to show for it at the very end. So that's terrible. So anybody out there, if you have questions concerning a living trust, probate, a will, a sale of a property after all of this stuff, please contact Ed, contact myself, and just go ahead and comment on the post that we're going to put on, and share this with your friends and your family because it's really important. Everybody needs to take care of this, including myself. I always practice what I preach. Ed, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for educating us out there because we really, really need it.
Thank you, Chris. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me today.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.